depending on where you're watching this from. Some of you might know me from, if you're from my hometown. Some of you might know me from high school. You might know me from my time in Valverde County 4-H. You might know me because of my parents. Or you might even know me from my infamous mugshot in the hometown newspaper when I was arrested for my third DWI. But what I am is a person in long-term sobriety. Alright, I keep that first and foremost. Throughout anything I do, because I've seen through my story and my experience what happens when I put my sobriety second. I lose it all. You know, and the thing is, I don't even lose it all. I give it away. I give it away happily and willingly. You know, I hear the stories of people saying, you know, I lost the kids, the wife, the home, the car. I didn't lose anything. I gave it away happily and willingly. And that's a common theme in my story that you'll come to hear. For 7 years, I was a chronic alcoholic. And for the latter part of the past 3 years, I drank beer, liquor, wine, whatever the fuck I could get. And I sniffed cocaine as well. And crack on occasion. In this video, I've done videos in the past. Some more recent. But in this video, everything will come out. Everything. Not to say that I've been blocking things out. I just haven't had the opportunity to fully disclose everything, and I feel like this would be the perfect time to do it. So yeah, for 7 years I was a chronic alcoholic, and for 3 years, the past 3 years, I was drink beer, sniff cocaine, smoke crack on occasion. Because I was not at a point in my life where I was ready to be honest, reliable, and dependable. And you'll hear a common theme in my story is that those 3 words do not work well with me. Because they don't help me get one more. They don't. And I'm trying to paint a picture here for you people just to show you how the disease of addiction really works. It's cunning, baffling, and powerful, and it's so powerful that is just an understatement. First off, I'm gonna give you a little of a background on me and who I am and where I hail from. I was born and raised in the small border town of Del Rio, Texas, just 2.5 hours west from here in San Antonio. Or west from San Antonio. I come from a rather extreme family, if you will. Rather extreme family, and you know, my mother is the most important person to me. You know, if I can be a centimeter of what she is, you know, like, I have arrived. You know, I this woman and my grandmother as well, and my dad. The most important people in my life. The greatest thing that happened to this world and to me in that matter. Like I said, I come from a rather extreme family. My mother, she's been an elementary school teacher for over 10 years now, I believe. My dad has a rather well-paying job that I cannot disclose those details due to reasons for confidentiality. My grandmother, she raised my mom and my 2 aunts and 2 uncles pretty much completely on her own. My grandfather who to this day is still one of the greatest men I've ever known. Just because me and him were extremely close whenever I was growing up, or whenever I was very, very, very young. He and I were extremely close. But he suffered from the same disease that I have. But he's what most people would call a functioning alcoholic. You know, it's just, and you know, some people are able to keep stability with it. To those people, more power to you, brother. But yeah, my grandmother pretty much raised them on their own. Grandpa was never really there. I won't get too much into that part of the story just because that's really not part of my story. So in my family, a common theme in my family is that mediocrity is not accepted. It just isn't, and the reason why is because whenever my mom and her brothers and her sisters were growing up, we come from a neighborhood where not too many people make it. The odds were completely stacked against them, and you know, by the good grace of God, you know, they got what they wanted to get. You know, despite any and all adverse consequences, they did what they had to do to get what they wanted to get, and they sure got it. And you'll see how later on down the line that comes into play into my story. My aunt, the oldest one, she also has a rather well-paying job. My other aunt, she is a psychology professor at a university in Maine. My two uncles, they've always been extremely hard workers. One of my uncles runs a dent repair shop in my hometown. Very well-known repair shop. He does very well for himself. And my other uncle is a contractor, I think, or an inspector for a company at the local Air Force base there, so he makes rather well money too. So everybody found their own way to their own form of success. So growing up, there's a lot of expectations on me. At least I felt like it, and everything that I'm saying right now is coming from my perspective and how everything kind of affected me. I'm sure my family will have different ways of explaining it, but this is just how I felt in these moments and throughout the duration of my story. So a big theme growing up for me was just mediocrity was not accepted. You were gonna give it your all in whatever you did, and you know, like it almost like anything less than success, anything less than being the best, was not accepted. So for me, growing up, I very much worked hard, not necessarily because I wanted the success, but mostly because I lived in a lot of fear growing up. I lived in fear of failure and fear of rejection. So I can safely say that anything that I participated in, I worked very hard at being the best, whether it was baseball or 4-H, you know, school. I'm not going to say I was an A honorable student, but I was a rather well student. But a lot of the hard work that I put in wasn't necessarily revolved around like my desire to succeed. It was mostly revolved around my fear of failure and fear of rejection. And you know, I think the first time I had like a fear of failure, it was I think it had something to do with baseball. I don't remember, but I do remember the first fear of failure was quite an ugly one. You know, I very much felt very like demoralized in a sense, and you know, I didn't want to go through that again. So I made sure that anything that I did, I worked extremely hard in. and I did rather well in everything, growing up, whenever I was 7 years old, I think, not even, probably 5 years old, it was probably around the first time I ever picked up a baseball glove or a baseball, and I fell in love. I fell in love with the game. I really did. Around 5 years old is the first time I started playing baseball, and at the age of 8 is whenever, or no, age of 9 is whenever I first enrolled in 4-H. And a common theme that you'll hear throughout this part of the story is that the only two places where I actually felt completely comfortable and like content with myself was either on a baseball field or in the show ring, doing things that I was good at. Because I knew I wouldn't fail. So therefore I didn't live in fear of failure or rejection. And it was mostly because I genuinely enjoyed doing these things. But with the sense of that, living in that fear, I always felt very uncomfortable with myself. Extremely uncomfortable. And that's a very ugly feeling to have, being that young. I lived in this feeling of uncomfortableness from the ages of about 9 or 10 to about, really, to now. Now I don't live in that feeling of uncomfortableness anymore. I'm very content with myself and comfortable with myself. I'm very accepting of who I am and where I come from. But yeah, at those points in time, at that age, living in that uncomfortableness, that's a very ugly feeling. I don't wish that upon anybody. I was always at a fight. I was always in this battle to. I didn't need to feel great. I just wanted to feel okay, right? I wanted to just set me in the middle and I'll be fine. And for the life of me, I could never, hardly ever feel like that. If it wasn't inside on a baseball field or inside a show ring, it just wasn't there for me, and I never could quite figure it out. So from the ages of about 9 to, I guess, 13, it was like a mild feeling of uncomfortableness. But from the ages of 13 to 18 or 17, those feelings were very extreme, very much extreme. So I never felt content with myself, so I had to go and search for validation from others. I always wanted to fit in. I always wanted to be a part of the cool crowd, even though I was a pretty damn cool person growing up. But I always wanted to fit in, and I always just felt like I did. So growing up, I suffered from very, very low self-esteem. And it never went away. It never did. And it finally went away when I started drinking. It's because it felt like a rite of passage for me. And I'll explain that more later on. So from the ages of 13 to 17, I was always extremely uncomfortable, never content, seeking validation from others. And then in high school is where it got extremely bad. It was good God, it was terrible. Those had to have been the worst 4 years. No, I can't say that. There were some extremely bad times, those 4 years. I just, I was rather bullied, and I was always given a really hard time in high school just because I don't know why. I don't know if it was that I came from a different background or what it was, but I was never really accepted. Never really. I was hardly ever accepted. Like, I wasn't accepted into anything. The only thing I was accepted into was 4-H, and that's just because I had already been in it for so many years. And the person that I am is the person that is supposed to be in it. Like, it's you're playing high school baseball. I mean, if it seemed like, because I was a very respectable person, very respectful, very polite, and it seemed like the baseball players that I hung around with were just fucking assholes. And if y'all are watching this, I'm fucking sorry, but that's just how it is. But in 4-H, it's, you're supposed to be respectful. So with that, I was very much accepted. And honestly, without trying to toot my own horn, at those moments, I felt like the fucking man. So I that's whenever I was like very comfortable, and I felt okay. And when I graduated high school, all that ended. All of that. I didn't have that like escape to go to anymore. Like, I didn't have that resort where I could just like walk into one place and feel this weight lifted off my shoulders. I didn't have that anymore, so I got into drinking. And I drank a couple of occasions in high school and a couple of occasions in high school, but that's about it. And those occasions were about like 2 years apart from each other. But when I got to college, that's when things really were going to take a turn for the worse, and I wasn't prepared for it at all. I went to college and Texas State University, just right down the road in San Marcos, Texas. And I started drinking. First semester, I was what some people would call like a moderate drinker, because I was very motivated in the classroom. I had these aspirations, these dreams I wanted to achieve, these ambitions. My dream was always to be to run my own ranch. So with that being said, I pursued a degree in agricultural business, and I was very much passionate about it. So the first semester, I really gave it my all. I really did. I still had that feeling of like, I am the fucking man. And somewhere along the way, it started dwindling down, and because that feeling is only going to last for so long before you have to go and run towards something that is going to give it to you again. And that semester went well, and I think where shit really started hitting the fan. I had this girl that I was dating at the time. We carried our relationship from my senior year in high school into college, and I think it was around Halloween 2014, I think this was. I got drunk at a party, and I ended up kissing some chick, and I felt terrible about it, and I told her the next day. I said, hey, I messed up, I cheated, and she left me, and we got back together like 2 days later, but the feeling wasn't there anymore, and you couldn't avoid it. So we ended up calling it quits completely. And it never felt right. Like, I did not feel right anymore. I always felt I had a missing void. She wanted nothing to do with me, so for some reason, I don't know how, but with that, all motivation was gone, just completely. The next semester, going into spring semester, I signed up for classes, and I went to the first week of class, and I did not go to another fucking class again the entire semester. I spent about 3 to 4 months just fucking off. I was pretty much drinking every single day. You know, from the moment I woke up until the moment I went to sleep, if I even went to sleep. At this moment in time, I wasn't into drugs yet. I think I smoked a little bit of weed. A little bit of weed, and that's about it. But weed was never really my thing. I just never liked that really downward effect. I don't know. I didn't like not knowing what the fuck I was feeling. I don't know how to explain it, but I just ended up quitting smoking. And it's safe to say that my drinking got to a point where motivation was gone, priorities were gone. I was not being honest. I was not being reliable, not dependable. Because, like I said, those three things don't help me get one more. They just don't. You get to turn that on. But yeah. So that semester goes by. I get a notice that I'm going on academic probation, but by this time, I knew what my intentions were if I stayed. So I called my dad and I said, Dad, you know, I basically had told him about my decision to leave and to go back home. And he was rather supportive behind it because my dad didn't graduate from college either. So he was very much on the understanding side. You know, I get where you're coming from. College isn't for everybody. He was okay with it. Well, not okay with it, but he understood. My mom and the rest of my family were really giving me shit about it. About not staying, not giving it another chance. But nobody really took the time to understand me. Like, this is not for me. I don't want to do this. But what I didn't know now that I know then, or what I didn't know then that I know now, is that alcohol had, like, completely consumed me. It took a matter of 5 months, or about, I guess you could say a year, for alcohol to just, it had me in its fucking claws. Alcoholism had just clinched its shit on me and it fucking swallowed me up. So that happens. I'm getting shit from my family, and whenever you put alcoholism and fucking like feeling demoralized from your family together, that shit just doesn't end well. So I'm back home. Or whenever I make that call to my dad, I say I'm coming home. He said, that's fine if you come home. Just know you're not moving in with us. And I said, yeah, I know already. You said it. By this time, I already had arrangements to get an apartment. And, you know, things were going to work out. It was going to be different this time. Right? So I'm back home. I'm living with my uncle. We're splitting a 2-bedroom apartment that we lived in for about a year, or that I lived in for about a year. I'm still doing pretty okay. So what I didn't mention, I have to backtrack a little bit. Before I left, I decided to do a couple of classes during the spring or during the summer sessions, the first session. And, you know, was it? Yeah, we'll just fuck it, yeah. And the dorm that I was living in at the time, I had it to myself, but a buddy of mine who still lived in San Marcos, who was also doing summer as well, he comes over to my house or to the dorm one night. We're making plans to go to a party, but we're waiting on another friend of ours. He gets to the dorm. Next thing you know, small talk happens. Next thing you know, a fucking dime bag of cocaine is pulled out in my dorm. And I didn't really know what to say, how to react to it. I really didn't care. And he said, you want to try some of this shit? And I was really like, I don't know, I've never done it. And I tried it, and I felt fucking amazing. But I hadn't touched it again for about 2 or 3 years. And we'll get to that later on. But so I'm back home, living with my uncle. I've got a job working at a bank. And, you know, I'm drinking a lot more than usual. And by this time, I'm going, like I said, I lived in a border town, so I'm going across the border to go drink and party over there on the weekends because drinks are cheap and you can get fucked up really easily. So I lived like that for about a few months, lose that job. I ended up getting a job at a car dealership, which meant more money, which obviously is gonna lead to more drinking. And so you'll see that like this shit progressed really bad. It's safe to say I was drinking just about every night, every single night. I was either, if I wasn't drinking at a friend's house, I was drinking at my apartment, or I was like driving around to an open spot and drinking there. I basically looked for any excuse to crack open a beer. And I was showing up hungover just about damn near every day. And I had lost all control. I couldn't. You know, 6 months go by and I get my first DWI. And that was the first intervention. That was the first one. Things happen. My parents are extremely pissed. They see it fitting to remove me from the apartment and have me live at home again, put some structure and balance in my life. They had the greatest intentions behind it, but my actions dictated something completely different. I was back in school because for about a year I wasn't in school. They made part of the terms was I had to start going to school again. So I enrolled for the semester, do extremely well, but I'm still sneaking out of my parents' house and drinking, and that was part of the rules, is that I couldn't drink anymore, but I still found a way to sneak out. And come on, I'm gonna do what I have to do to get what I wanted to get. Like I said, despite any and all adverse consequences, I did what I had to do to get what I wanted to get. I don't want to lie to you. I don't want to steal from you. I don't want to hurt you. But I don't have the option not to. I don't have the privilege not to hurt you, not to lie to you, not to steal from you. And it's not personal, it's just business. So the disease that I play, called alcoholism, is the kind that when that thing calls, I fucking answer by any and all means necessary. That shit tells me to jump and I ask how high. That's how much of a hold it had on me. And I'm not to say that I'm cured, because nobody's ever cured. I feel like if people say that they're cured, they're full of shit. So safe to say I'm sneaking out from my parents' house just about every night. And sure enough, I end up getting caught. They see it fit to kick me out of the house, and I'm homeless. And I didn't know what to do, so I called my aunt. She takes me in, and it's the same routine. Things go good for a couple of months, then people catch on to my bullshit, and next thing you know, I'm out on my ass again. With my aunt, it was just the decision making was getting worse and worse. My decision making had gone to complete shit by now. I see it fit to gain her trust enough, and just when I feel like she trusts me enough, I'm gonna start doing some fucking conniving shit. So I started taking her car. She had set a curfew for me to get home at 2 a.m. because she didn't think I had that much of a problem yet. She was actually one of the people that like advocated for me. But I see fit to betray her, take her car, and go out and continue drinking, and I did that for a few months. And she sees fit to finally tell me I gotta move out. But my uncle, my saving grace at the time, he gives me an offer to move in with him into a house, and that we were gonna rent it out. So I do that. He has the greatest intention. A common theme behind this is that people have the greatest intentions for me, but I don't have any fucking intentions for myself to better my life, because the disease that I have, it doesn't give me the privilege to have options of what I will or will not do to change my life, to better my life. It doesn't give me the privilege to have those options. So, despite anybody's good intentions to help me, my actions dictate things completely different. So my uncle decides he's gonna move me into that house. He tells me I'm gonna be kind of strict on you. I'm gonna help you straighten out your life. And in my mind, I'm thinking that's a great fucking idea. Great idea. But my disease wants no part of it. None. So I'm living with him. I lived with him for about 2 years, and it was the same cycle. I would do good, then I'd start fucking up, and then he'd get strict, and then I'd do good, and then I'd start fucking up. And it was just the same vicious cycle for about 2 years. Finally, it got to a point where, in those 2 years that we lived together, I think I went through about 4 or 5 jobs. I don't know that anybody's ever said that shit before. I went through about 4 or 5 jobs. Couldn't hold down a job. Couldn't hold down myself. I couldn't do jack shit. Again, decision making had gone to complete shit by now. So I decided it's time for a fresh start. I'm gonna move to New Mexico and change my life. I'd taken up an offer to go work for a pipeline company in New Mexico, in Hobbs, New Mexico. That was gonna pay me rather well, pay me more money than I had ever made in my life. So I take it up, and I was clean for about a week or two, and then I was drinking again. Went from just drinking on the weekends to then drinking every other day to now I'm drinking every day, and I'm getting into trouble again, man. And it's a cycle that I could never get out of. And then I'm given these ultimatums, separate ultimatums. The first ultimatum I had gotten in trouble back home, and I won't get into the details of that. But my dad basically sent out an email to not only me, but to my aunts, my uncles, because I'm very fucking good at twisting words. I'm extremely good at twisting words and making you believe me rather than believing somebody else. So he sends out an email that entailed, you're ruining everything for yourself. You're ruining, your mom and I's marriage. Everybody's worried about you. If you don't clean up and get your life straight, we're gonna cut you off and you won't hear from any of us again. And I don't know about you, but I love my mom and my dad and my brothers. So yeah, I'm gonna get clean. Can't be that fucking hard, right? So I stay clean for about 3 months. Lo and behold, I break that sobriety and start drinking again. And I think that same year I got 2 DWIs in 2 months. 2 DWIs in 2 months. And after the second one, it was the same thing again. If you don't stop drinking, we're gonna stop talking to you, and it was the same deal. I'm gonna get clean again. It's just the same old vicious cycle, and it never worked out. I never kept my sobriety because I was never the one who even wanted it in the first place. You know, it's that second round of sobriety. I was drinking Old Duels like every fucking day. I'll tell you what, you hang around the barbershop long enough, sooner or later you're gonna get a haircut. And I broke my sobriety in December of 2019. And the time between January 2020 and June 17th, my sobriety date, had to have been the most miserable months of my entire life. Because for the first time, I was feeling the effects of my alcoholism and my addiction, and not only the physical effects, but the emotional disconnection from my entire family. My mom saw it fit to finally read through my bullshit, and she finally came to terms with the idea that I might not ever stop, that I was unfixable. I was deemed the alcoholic that was unfixable. I can't say I was deemed an addict because nobody knew that I was heavy into my cocaine addiction, and no, sure as hell nobody knew that I was smoking crack sometimes. Just to set the record straight, I did it like 5 times because I know my mom's gonna watch this and she's not gonna be too happy about it. But like I said in this video, I'm being as graphic as possible, completely open. There are things said in this video that probably I'll never say again. But yeah, so at this moment in time, I'm drinking more than fucking usual. My cocaine addiction was at a peak. I just couldn't. I couldn't function without it. I couldn't go to work without doing one before leaving the house. I completely lost all ability to function normally without a beer or a bag. And around February, my dad called me, and he was aware that I had broken my sobriety. He was aware that I'd been driving around with a suspended license. And he called me and he struck a deal with me. He said, son, it seems like you've only got me to lean on, and I'm gonna help you out. He said, all I need you to do is just stay clean, no more drinking, and stop driving with a suspended license. And I saw fit to say yes. Because it's my dad. Oh, why would I not say yes to my dad? And 2 months down the road, he found out that I had been drinking again. And he only found out because I wrecked my truck drunk driving. Hence my 4th DWI. And that day that he found out and he called me, that had to have been one of the worst days of my life, if not the worst. He called me and said, it was a very short conversation, and it went something like this. He said, hey, what happened to the truck? And I wanted to play stupid. I said, I don't know what you're talking about, but he already knew, so I was just gonna tell him. I said, I wrecked the truck, and I got arrested for driving with a suspended license. And he, lo and behold, he still knew that I was fucking lying. And he said, well, I told you that if you started drinking again or you did this bullshit again, that I wasn't gonna help you anymore. And you said yes, and you understood. And the conversation ended with, you broke your promise. You didn't hold your end of the deal. I'm done helping you. Good luck, son. I hope you have a good life. Those are not the best fucking words to hear from your dad, especially when he's about the last lifeline that you have. And it crushed me. It crushed me. And the next day I had suicidal thoughts. And I don't know how I made it through that last month and a half without fucking killing myself. But what I know now that I didn't know then, is that I was the kind of alcoholic that I wanted to kill myself on a daily basis, but I didn't want to hurt myself in the process. I was living on an animalistic level, and the abnormal had become the normal. So, after that, my suicidal thoughts were just at an all-time high. I knew I needed to change, and as a matter of fact, I had been looking into rehabs 1 month prior to me actually checking in. So I knew that I had a problem, and I knew that I wanted to change, but I just always had that little thing that was holding me back and taking me back to my old shit. Until June 17th. June 17th is when I called my dad. And, you know, I had plenty of phone calls going through that day, trying to get a hold of people. And lo and behold, somebody answered the call when I asked for help. So now, when somebody else needs help, I answer the call by any and all means necessary. I answer day or night, no matter what I'm doing. If I have to find some way to get away from something to answer your call, I absolutely will. A common theme in my story is I really believed social acceptability was everything. So I lived in a generation, or I live in a point in time where, like, doing cocaine and partying your ass off and having sex with random people that I just met was like fucking glorified, and it seemed normal. But I did those things not because I wanted to, but just because I wanted to be accepted, and I wanted to feel good, and I wanted to feel comfortable. And for the past 7 years, the only time that I ever felt comfortable with myself, or just in any situation, is if I had a beer or a fucking baggie. Because for the life of me, I couldn't feel good enough for myself. Like, I needed you to tell me that I was doing good. I needed you to tell me that I looked good, to validate what I was trying to feel. Social acceptability equals personal recovery. That's not exactly the case. Where I'm at now, to this day, I'm sitting at 7 months and 20 days of wonderful sobriety. Studying to become a licensed chemical dependency counselor, to be a counselor at rehabilitation centers. I currently work at a multi-purpose homeless shelter. I'm a temp there. Hopefully in a couple of months I'll get hired on full time to be permanent. And my purpose is to help people. And I do these videos, and I have a podcast titled The Road Less Traveled. That thing's been in the works for about a couple of months now. I think I'm going on 3 months of it being in the works. And it's become something that it's become a lot bigger than what I thought it would. You know, now I've got people from really, my main purpose was just to kind of give people that are already in the program just a little more push in their recovery. But now I'm getting calls from people from my hometown saying, if you can get clean, there's no reason why I can't. Can you help me? And I always say yes. I always answer that call because somebody answered the call when I reached out for help. I give back what was so freely and gratefully given to me. There's a simple way to explain this disease, and it's quite baffling. You diagnose me with HIV, and I'm rushed to the hospital to get medication. Fatal disease. or let me backtrack a little bit. A little more understanding behind the disease of addiction is that disease, if you are diagnosed as an addict or an alcoholic, that means that disease left untreated equals fatal death. You die. You can't dispute that. That's facts. So you diagnose me with HIV, I'm rushed to the hospital to get medication because I don't want to die of fatal disease. You diagnose me with cancer, I'm rushed to the hospital to get chemo because I don't want to die of fatal disease. You diagnose me as an addict or an alcoholic, and I need a glass of wine, a bottle of whiskey, or a bag of cocaine to figure out what the fuck is wrong with you for diagnosing me with such a disease. And it's just as fatal as the first two diseases. But me left to my own devices, I'll believe that voice in my head that talks to me in my own voice that tells me that I don't have a disease, because it's the only disease that don't try to tell me that I don't have a disease on a daily basis. So, with that being said, I'm gonna, this is the first video that I'm uploading to my YouTube channel, and I'm sure it won't be the last, I promise you that. There's a lot more projects in the works, more ideas that I've got going on, and I'm sure they'll follow through with time. I just need to get a little bit more acclimated with my situation at hand. But I'm gonna end this video like I end every single other one. Your past, whatever it is, does not have to dictate your future. The disease of addiction, it does not have to be a death sentence. While it is a fatal disease, it's only fatal if it's left untreated. So go get the help. God damn, I know that phone weighs 1,000,000 pounds. It's the smallest object that we fucking possess, but it weighs 1,000,000 pounds when we try to make that call. But I guarantee you, if you make that call today, it could be the greatest day of your life. If you play your cards right, today could be the greatest day of your life. Make that call. Make that call to a long lost loved one that you've been disconnected with due to your addiction. Call your friend, call the last lifeline that you have. And if you don't have a fucking lifeline, call the nearest treatment center. Somebody will answer your call because somebody answered their call prior. For fuck's sake, call me. My number's always gonna stay the same, 575-552-3668. If you or a loved one are going through anything right now, it doesn't have to be recovery oriented. I'm more than willing to help. Whatever it is. Mental health issues. I'm not a fucking therapist, but God bless, I will do my best to help you out. I promise you that. I'd love to be a part of your recovery. I hope this message brings you a glimpse of hope. And I hope you always stay blessed. Do yourself a favor. Play your cards right. Today could be the greatest day of your life. Peace.